Hey everyone, welcome back to Integrative Psychonautics. My name is Dave, and today's video is going to continue along the same trend of recent videos I've done of perhaps taking a divergence briefly away from the topic of psychedelics, directly talking a little more about other factors that are important to our spiritual well-being, our emotional, mental well-being, quality of life, if you will, that may not directly have to do with psychedelics, but obviously are going to be tied in to this general theme on this channel of personal development, personal growth, optimizing ourselves, transforming our lives, self-healing, this kind of a thing. And today's video, I think, is going to be really relevant to that. So, I don't know what it is, but lately I've just kind of been in a certain way. Maybe it's just the time of year, it's the season with the holidays. Maybe I'm just kind of going through a little melancholy moment in my life. Maybe it's just kind of where the stars are at. I don't really know. But I've kind of just been reflecting a lot on relationships and what's changed for me, how differently I run my relationships and interact inside of my relationships now compared to how I was in my 20s, how I've improved things, how much more fulfilling my relationships are now. I want to share a bit about that with you because I feel like there is a lot here in terms of bang for your buck, in terms of improving your quality of life, no matter who you are. Even if you're kind of a lone wolf person, you're kind of an independent person, maybe don't like people, maybe you haven't had a good history of relationships. I'm deeply convinced that one of the most important factors for a high quality life that's going to determine a major chunk of your happiness is the quality of your relationships. And so I wanted to talk a bit about that today and explain to you how there are certain things you can do. There's certain phrases you can say. There's certain ways you can interact with people that greatly optimize for better relationships. And I want to make the case to you that even if your focus right now isn't about others, but is about yourself and your own healing, how important, especially if you're coming from a background of trauma, let's say, how important being good at creating relationships with others is for your own healing. This is a circular thing where when you are good in relationships, it will make you feel better because it will make them feel better, which makes you feel better. And you feel good about treating people better and having cleaner, clearer relationships. They'll feel that and they'll feel the goodness coming from you and the right relationship coming from you. And that will inspire them to warm up to you more. So this is something that really matters in terms of your own happiness, your own quality of life, your own well-being, your own peace of mind, your own peace of heart, if you will. And there's more at play here, but I think that kind of sets up kind of why I want to talk about this a bit. So with all that being said, let's talk about what changes you can make in the way that you relate, things you can say, things you can do that will dramatically transform your quality of life. So there's a few things that got me thinking about this. First of all, I've just been thinking about, just looking at the quality of relating online, the quality of discourse, the way people treat each other online. And I realize online is not always the same as in person. There's a lot of discrepancy. There's a lot of things people do online that they would never do in person. And there's also, now we have a lot of people who grew up online, right? We have a lot of people coming of age in their 20s who grew up digital native and really maybe were under socialized or, didn't get the full set of skills of relating and now are kind of struggling with social anxiety and kind of relational issues and not, knowing how to really cleanly parse out how to relate online versus how to behave in person. And I was also thinking a lot about, trauma and coming from a trauma background. And there are aspects of it that I think are really sad that are rarely talked about. To me, one of the saddest things about trauma is that so often when we have trauma, what comes with that are aspects of our personality that kind of get distorted or charged or shaped in a particular way from the trauma that causes us to behave in ways to others that, we may not really recognize as being a turnoff, or we may kind of give ourselves a break on or give ourselves a discount on and say, that's just my personality. This is just how I am. This is how I've always been. This is how it's going to be with me. kind of thing. And we kind of make excuses for maybe what are some relational deficits on our part that maybe we're aware of and we can't change or don't feel we can change, or maybe we're not aware of at all. And what ends up happening is that these things damage our relationships with others. People react to them and feel, maybe offended or triggered or hurt or just uncomfortable, and end up not wanting to be close to us, not wanting to be in relationship with us, or have a relationship with us. And that ends up being extra painful for those of us who have trauma, because often part of how we get ourselves out of trauma is to start to have safer, healthier, secure relationships, right? And so when we've got this pattern of kind of being extreme with our personality and then triggering people, and maybe we're not aware of it, or maybe we're not really aware of how big of a deal it actually is, and that's kind of slowly adding this toxic layer to how people perceive and experience us, that then makes it harder for us to heal. And I just think that that's such a tragic, unfortunate thing. And it's really one of the sucky things about having a traumatic patterning in your psyche, in your personality, that you're still responsible for your behaviors and how you come across. And people are still going to judge you and respond to your behaviors, assuming that you're a healthy, normal individual, not realizing you have trauma. And so you're still on the hook to behave a certain way, to make people feel a certain way, regardless of whether or not that's an easy thing for you or not. And it complicates the whole thing. And it really creates and can kind of keep us stuck in trauma, because our relationships keep going sideways on us. And they keep going sideways on us because we're not really relating in a way that's sending other people good, healthy safety signals. So that's part of why I'm making this video, is to kind of, if you're someone from a trauma background, or someone who maybe just doesn't do great with people or wants to transform this area of your life, I want to give you some cues, some things you can do that really can make a huge difference. So I want to give you one more idea here, and then we'll go ahead and get into what those things are. Okay, so one more thing here, then we'll talk about it. Okay, so really quick, before we go ahead and get into kind of my point, the main content here, let me just kind of set up a little bit of a vision for you. So obviously one of the main topics on this channel is psychedelics, and also personal development and kind of the intersection between the two. Self-healing, personal transformation, trauma release, all this kind of stuff. And obviously, if you're talking about the history of psychedelics, that reaches back to the counterculture of the 60s and the peace movement, and this vision and this kind of utopian idea of world peace. And, what might be possible if we got, the cliche, of course, is if everyone dropped acid, or if everyone took ecstasy, might be the modern 90s version of that, and everyone had this experience of touching the profound depth and beauty in life, in themselves again, that maybe we would start to treat each other better and come together in the world. Now, I want to just create a vision for you for a moment, which is that obviously the world is kind of trending in the direction of conflict, of heaviness, of sorrow, of economic suffering, of political conflict, of social conflict. Here in the States, we've got a lot of polarization and internal conflict in the country, more so perhaps than ever before. There's a lot of gross, nasty, mean dynamics online of people that are bullies and that are judgmental and that are shit talkers, and just shame culture and judgment culture is thriving and well. And all of this really is steering the world, I think, away from whatever peace is possible for human beings. So, whether you want to think of that in the kind of extreme new age version of this 5D spiritual utopia, or whether you want to think of it in a more grounded, practical sense of just a better world where people are more happy, feel more safe, more healthy, relationships are generally thriving. If you want to know how to have relationships thrive, I want to submit to you the idea that tilting the world, and so the implication is not only personal, but transpersonal, collective. If we want to tilt the world towards world peace, world happiness, a lot of that is going to hinge on very small things that happen in relationship between people. Just small little things you can do. So basically, what I'm observing, what I've seen a lot, is that one of the major things that causes people to not have great relationships is not really understanding how secure attachment works, how to communicate security and safety to others, and give nice, comforting safety signals to other people in a way that creates a nice rapport and a nice safe space for people to be themselves. This is a huge part of where we're collectively failing with each other when it comes to relationships. And there's a whole host of things that we can say to other people that will transform our relationships, that will have huge impacts on other people, that will have huge impacts on how they perceive us, on the implications for how safe that relationship is with us. There is a whole bunch of things we can say that transform the way people experience us, helps their nervous system to offload stress and fear and depression and anxiety, which again feeds back to us as more connection, more safety, more friendship, more trust, more rapport, which over time helps us to offload our stress, our trauma, all that, and it creates this upward spiral of mutual well-being and comfort and goodness. And so I wanted to kind of point out what these things are that generally people don't say enough of to each other, that make all the fucking difference when it comes to quality of relationship. And these are little things you can do. These are little phrases you can say to others that will be transformative. I promise you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. And maybe, just maybe, we will transform our own selves. We will release our own trauma by creating healthier relationships, which has been my experience, that a lot of times when you start to relate to other people better first, it helps you to heal yourself in some interesting way. Also, maybe it will be healing for other people's trauma. And maybe, just maybe, if we do enough of this and it becomes more of a common thing and more well-known, that collectively the tone of relationship between humanity and itself will start to shift in a more positive direction. So without further ado, here's my list of things you can say that will change your fucking life for the better. Okay, so the first one here is going to be obvious, as most of these are going to be. See, this is one of the ironies of this entire list, is that these are all things that are very common phrases that most people don't say enough to each other, that are totally transformative of your life if you do. And yet people struggle to say these things often enough or easily enough. These are often like hard things to get out and say, but they shouldn't be. And the first obvious one here is thank you. Like, just simply saying thank you more regularly to people when they're kind, when they're complimentary, when they're respectful, when they're considerate of you, if they help you in a small way, help you in a big way, they do something that is in any way something that contributes to your experience, whether it's a server at a restaurant, whether it's a family member doing what they always do and they're going to do for you, whether it is a stranger or, again, someone you've known your entire life, saying thank you freely and easily and meaning it is profound. It is so transformative. It can really, really, really communicate that you are aware of what the other person is doing, that it has meaning and impact to you, that they have value to you. And it demonstrates that you value your relationship with this person enough to just acknowledge them and say thank you. Now, why this is such a hard one for people to say blows my mind. It's beyond me, to be honest. Like, this should not be a difficult thing to say. And yet there are a lot of people out there who really struggle just to say thank you. Like that, like it has to be a big deal. It doesn't. Don't make it a big deal. Just say thank you easily, freely. It's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be, even though it can have a big impact on your life, that doesn't mean you have to make it be this big thing. Just use thank you frequently, often. It expresses gratitude. Gratitude is good for the heart, is good for the psyche, is acknowledgement that something is going right. And it's an acknowledgement that you are in harmony with someone else. Often we can use thank you as a way to just say, okay, we're on the same page. Oh, thank you. And that's a really nice thing to communicate to others. Okay, let's talk about the next one. Another really obvious one here is I'm sorry, right? So this is another one, just like thank you, that a lot of people struggle to say. There's a lot of people have really a lot of baggage around guilt and shame and blame and being made wrong and needing to defend our identities against being made wrong and have the room to also be right and be acknowledged that, we're coming from a positive place or this kind of thing, right? It turns to this whole fucking struggle when it really shouldn't. It really should be so easy to just be like, hey, I'm sorry, my bad. Just real, we all make mistakes as part of learning, right? If you think about it, as an example, mistake making is the experience of learning. They're one and the same. You can't separate the two. You can't learn with no mistakes. Anything you do is going to involve a lot of, trial and error to get it just right. I don't care what it is. If you think about it, learning to walk, right? If you stood up and walked perfectly and had perfect balance from then on, that would be a miracle. Every child stands up, wobbles over, falls on their face a bunch of times, and eventually they're able to stand on their own, and that alone is a miracle. And then from there, they learn to take steps, right? And then they take a few steps and they fall on their butt or whatever. And that's the process. Making mistakes is how we learn. You can't just be good at something. Same is true for relationships. And for the rest of your life, I guarantee you will make mistakes in relationship. You will have trespasses. You will, say the wrong thing. You'll have bad timing sometimes. You will be poorly attuned sometimes. You will misinterpret somebody sometimes. You will, come into, assumptions that are incorrect sometimes and project on people. You will yada, yada, yada. We will make trespasses large and small in our relationships. And that's just part of the learning curve of every single relationship, because everyone's different. Every person you interact with is going to be different. Every relationship is going to be different. Every person's sensitivities or needs or whatever is going to be different. Psychological makeup is going to be different, which means you're going to make mistakes with each one of those people along the way, right? Some more, some less, but it's going to happen. And so when it happens, the best thing you can do is just to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No big deal. It doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing. And yet there are so many people who can't do that, who just can't take a little bit of accountability, and just, hey, sorry, and your ability, let's be clear, your ability to repair relationships is paramount to maintaining them and keeping them. You can't keep a relationship good without repair. And you can't just assume that not repairing, that just ignoring the trespass and moving forward is going to be repair. For some people that works. For a lot of people that doesn't work. And just acknowledging that you trespassed or goofed or messed up or something wasn't quite right and you kind of weren't on point sometimes, that's just part of being a human being. And to just say I'm sorry is a way to just acknowledge that so that you can kind of just move forward. Sometimes, obviously, with apologies, there will be big trespasses, big mistakes, where we're going to have to pause and we're going to have to really let that person know, hey, I'm really sorry. I really get the impact that had on you. We're going to have to feed that back to them and really hear them out, give them the space, show them some respect, and really make a sincere apology from a deep place. And so there are big deal apologies that happen, but that's not all the time. I would encourage you to say, I'm sorry, whenever it's appropriate, Don't say it if it's not appropriate. Don't say it to people please. But I would encourage you to say it whenever it's appropriate, easily, comfortably. Oh, sorry, my bad. Oh, too much. Oh, did I say the wrong thing? Sorry. I do this with my friends all the time. If if I say something and it seems like it rubs someone the wrong way, I'll just be like, too much, and just check in, because you never know. And we never know what's going on inside another person, even those that are close to us, and what's really meaningful and what isn't. And it just doesn't hurt to err on the safe side of, hey, sorry, hey, I care. Hey, oops, stepped on your toes there a little bit. My bad, and just be a considerate human being. That's really all I'm sorry really boils down to is, hey, I see you. I care about you. I get something I did may not have may have impacted you in some way, and I want to be considerate and, conscientious to that. So say sorry whenever it's appropriate. Okay, so another one here, and you're going to kind of notice a theme here of, again, this is the shit that people don't say often enough. Often these are the things that are hard for people to say, but these shouldn't be hard. And if you make them not hard, which you can do, then it will benefit your relationships and benefit your life and benefit the world. These are small things you can do that make a huge impact. And so the next one here that a lot of people really struggle with is, you're right. Someone makes a good point. Someone says something that's really honest or is accurate or, is relevant. Give them the credit. Give them enough power. You don't have to give them all the power over you. Don't be so hung up about relational power, but just be like, hey, you're right. Oh, you're right about that. Or, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I can see how that's actually on point. That's accurate. Give people the credit. Just say you're right when they're right. It gives them so much value. It lets them know, oh, okay, right. So you're being fair with me. Right. So you're going to give me credit where credit's due. Right. So we can actually trust each other to have a real conversation rather than some sort of bullshitty thing. Because when I'm right, you'll tell me I'm right. It creates trust. So important to do. Don't be stingy with your right. Don't be weird about, when you're in your personal power, when you're in your health and well-being, there's no power struggle. You don't need to fucking get weird about who's right or wrong or that kind of a thing. All of that is an indicator you're not in your healthy self, right? And again, this is one of those things that the more you create these healing, repairing, positive relational expressions, it will heal you. So the more you're able to acknowledge other people when they're right, the more you're able to acknowledge yourself when you're right too. And the more you can feel assured in that and be in alignment with that because you're being fair. So say you're right more often. Okay, another really similar one here, but is slightly different from you're right, is saying, I was wrong. This is so, so important. You've got to be able to freely admit when you don't have the right information, you leapt to a conclusion, you made an unfair judgment, you said the wrong thing was on TV, whatever it is, big or small. It's so important. It engenders so much trust. It is so healing to let yourself off the hook from always having to be right and simply say, I was wrong, right? No, I was wrong about that. I didn't know. I didn't see. Whatever it is, right? Part of being a human being is that we only really have access to so much information in a given moment. And we are often running underneath the surface on a huge set of assumptions. And a lot of our thinking and a lot of our conclusion making is built on assumptions that are sometimes not true, not accurate, not correct, just not the real true information. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes we're wrong, proudly so. And sometimes, we don't mean to be wrong, but it's so important just to be able to say, I was wrong. This is another one of those things that, again, some people really struggle with, and it can be such a drama. And we really do have a culture where I would say your average person probably has a really hard time saying something as simple as I was wrong. It turns to this whole drama, right? And we have people who really struggle in the modern era to take accountability. But that's really unfortunate. That's not a good thing, right? Because with not being able to be accountable, we are not able to rectify things. We can't change, we can't have power over that which we are not taking ownership of. And in order to take ownership of, correcting something, making something right, doing something well, we have to be able to say, I was wrong along the way. Whenever you're looking at a great leader, who's achieving really amazing things, I guarantee you that person has the capacity to admit when they've missed the mark, when they were full of shit, when they were wrong, when their assumptions were wrong, when their theory was wrong, when the information they were operating on was incorrect, what have you. And this is one of those things that, again, if you just get good at it, it doesn't have to be a big, heavy thing. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You just be like, I'm sorry, I was wrong about that. And it will make all the difference in the world in terms of your relationships and the quality of connection between you and other people. Again, when other people hear from you, I was wrong, then they feel safer instantly. And so being able to admit where you're wrong creates a space for people to trust you, which again is healing for you, is healing for them, healing for both of you, and ultimately healing for the world, the more we can all kind of be cleaner and clearer in our relationships. So say I was wrong whenever it's appropriate. It's really a very powerful thing you can do. Another one that's really similar to I was wrong is also I was wrong about that, right? So taking ownership again of places where maybe you're overextended, you're incorrect, you don't have the right information, you made a judgment, you made a guess, you made a whatever, and just being like, hey, I was wrong about that. I didn't have the right information. I didn't. Especially obviously one place where this matters a lot. Not that I'm not a political channel. I don't want to get into politics on this channel. I actually want this channel to be a safe space from all the kind of political division out there. But this is a place where that really matters a lot. When you're starting to talk about big, important things and emotions get involved and people get charged about it, being able to just de-escalate that by being like, hey, I was wrong about that. Hey, I know we had this talk and I kind of had this whole point and I was building on this one thing and I was wrong. I changed my mind, or I see it differently, or I got new information that really, shifted my perspective. Being able to say these kinds of things really, again, is really transformative for your relationships. All right. Another one here that is really hard for a lot of people to say, but really fucking matters, is being able to say you're important to me. And again, one of the themes I'm hoping to impart to you in this entire list, in this entire video, is that you can do all of these in a really easy, smooth, non-dramatic way. It doesn't have to be a big deal to let someone know that they're important to you. You can just say something like, I really appreciate you, or I really value you, or obviously you're an important person in my life, or you can be really direct and candid and sincere and open-hearted and be like, hey, you're really important to me. I really value you. Or I really appreciate our friendship. Or I really appreciate you in my life. These kinds of statements are so rare and so fucking healing. And so think how little you hear that from people. And think about how many people out there also hear that so rarely from each other. And yet we all have each other in each other's lives, and we have relationships and people in our lives, and there's love and there's connection and there's stuff going on. And yet how often do we have the courage, the heart to just be like, hey, you're important to me. Hey, I really value you. Hey, I'm so grateful for you. Right? It's such like a simple thing to say. And it's so obviously genuinely the truth sometimes. And yet we don't have the courage to say it. And this is one of those things that, again, you want to change your life, find the courage to just tell the people that are important to you that they're important to you. It's so beautiful. It's amazing what can happen from that. Okay, now we finally get to what may be, perhaps out of all the difficult things to say on this list, for some people, the most difficult, understandably. For others of you, this phrase comes really easily. For some of you, this is kind of somewhere in between. And that would be, I love you. And I really think that it's so incredibly important to express this, not only for other people to hear, not only for other people to receive. It's also important for your heart, I think, to be able to express your love and your care and your affection. I think it's healing for your body, for your physical body, when you express this. I don't think this is something to keep in or hold on to. This is not something to hide. This is something to share when you mean it. I also think, I guess I want to say really quick that I had the good fortune of growing up in a family where there was love present and where I heard I love you and where it was meant. But it wasn't something that was really a culture amongst my friends and my peers growing up, like as a kid, obviously, and then, as a teenager in high school and college and all that. I love you wasn't really something that was said amongst my friends and peer group. And then I moved to Northern California. And I kind of got involved in, kind of the new age community, if you will, the burner community, the raver hippie community, all that stuff, and in that culture, and it is a culture quite clearly, there's a strong culture inside of that of saying I love you to your friends and your family, the people you're tight with that are part of your life, that you're close with, that you value, that you see on a regular basis. There's like this really free, open-hearted culture that I became a part of, that involved hugging people as a welcome, like pretty commonly, saying I love you pretty easily, and really removing the fear of showing and sharing and affirming, each other through, words, through touch, through presence, through eye contact, this kind of a thing. And it really was so transformative for me. And it really became a way of life for me. And became so normal that it was strange for me when I moved away from the Bay and, moved away from places where people were like, hey, and hey, I love you. And kind of had that open-hearted connection. In my experience, I do think it's a powerful phrase, and I don't want to belittle the importance of I love you. But I also think that it's valuable to say, and it's valuable to express and make clear to anyone in your life that you feel this way about. I think you never know, again, what someone is going through, what's happening on the inside for them, what emotions they're going through, what narratives and self-talk they're dealing with, what trauma they haven't cleaned up. And sometimes a well-timed, well-placed I love you that doesn't have to be a big deal or a heavy thing, said with just a good warmth in your spirit can do things for people you don't even know. You have no idea how much that can heal someone or be exactly what they needed to hear or the thing that changes their life. You just don't know. And to hold that back and hold that in is, I think, a great injustice that we all do to each other all the time. And something I would encourage you to experiment and play with, kind of breaking down and breaking through it and letting go of. Again, this is one of those things that is hard for a lot of people to say. But if you mean it, it doesn't have to be a dramatic thing. It doesn't have to be, because you're a fucking human being. Obviously, there are people you have affection for in your life. Well, let's hope. If not, that's something to fix. Let's be real. But assuming you have people you have some sort of affection for, let them know you have affection for them. In case something happens, whether they just decide that your relationship isn't that meaningful and peace out from being your friend or your partner or whatever, or whether that person passes away or you pass away, or life changes all the time, so just let people know, that you have affection for them. There's nothing wrong with that. It shouldn't be a heavy thing. Okay, another one here that is really, really a big, important communication to make when it's appropriate to make it. Again, that a lot of people have a hard time saying, that you need to just get over your blocks around saying it and say it when you mean it, is I forgive you. It's so important. I forgive you. Now, forgiveness is a whole other topic. I could easily do a whole other video on probably all of these, to be fair, but especially forgiveness. It's really important to get that forgiveness ultimately is not about condoning whatever trespass someone has made on you. And let me guess, if they've made a trespass and you hadn't forgiven them, they probably never apologized to you. So maybe you're starting to see how all this works together here, right? But let's just say someone trespassed against you in some way. They apologized. At some point, forgiveness is about not condoning what they've done, because you can disagree vehemently with people's actions. It's about you letting go of holding on to the grudge. It's about you being willing to make the space to reset your connection with that person, or at least communicate to them, hey, I've let go of being toxic and stewing on this. That's all. When you say, I forgive you, that's all you're doing. You're letting go of your toxic contraction around whatever upsets you about it, by fucking processing your emotions like an adult, by working through the shit, by getting yourself back to center. And just, if you can be back to center when you think about that person or that thing anymore, then you should be able to just forgive and say to yourself, I forgive them. So say to them, if when appropriate, I forgive you. Sometimes people, make small trespasses, and it's not a big deal, right? And so someone does something and it's not like a dramatic thing. It's just like, oh, that sucked, and it's really important, I think, even in those moments, just to be like, hey, all good. I forgive you. No big deal. Let's move on. Again, it makes the space to reset your relationship. And this capacity to repair relationships is super, super important. And it's a two-way street. It really is. So there are going to be times where people want to repair with you, and the onus is going to be on you to say, I forgive you. And there's going to be times where the shoe's on the other foot, and it's your job to apologize and hope that they have the bigness of heart to also say, I forgive you. Again, I think this dynamic of not forgiving people, and also this dynamic of when there's a rupture between you and another person, that you just kind of ignore it and just kind of like hope it goes away. And, my family had a bit of that culture in it. That shit's toxic. Don't do that shit. Don't just ignore what happened. And don't just assume that if you both ignore it long enough, you'll come back to like trust. That's a bad idea. That's trauma. That's codependency. That's shit you don't want to be cultivating in yourself and in your life and in your relationships. So, say I forgive you when it's appropriate. Another one that I think is really important here, that might be a little lighter, might be a little easier for some people to say, and can really change the dynamic between people in a nice way, in an opening, resetting kind of way, is to say, let me try that again. So maybe you kind of make a faux pas, you mess up, you cross someone's boundary you didn't realize, you say the wrong thing, you slightly misjudge them in some way, or what have you. Just be like, hey, let me try that again. Again, it goes with I'm sorry, or I was wrong, or I did something that wasn't quite right to you. Let me try that again. Just like, again, you want to create this spirit of togetherness, and that the connection is larger than these moments of misalignment, right? You want to create this field of resonance with those that you care about, those that are important to you. There's going to be people, of course, with whom you don't feel moved to do these things, or where maybe it's not appropriate, they're an acquaintance. But a lot of these, again, work really well even at an acquaintance kind of level relationship. I think it's really powerful just to say, like, hey, let me try that again. Oh, whoops, my bad. Let me go again. And it creates this spirit, again, of learning, of understanding that mistakes happen as part of growth and part of learning. And as a human being, you're always refining your ability to be smoother, clearer, more on point, more tuned in, more on your A game relationally. But, stumbles happen along the way, and you just kind of laugh it off and keep going, right? This is what I'm talking about here. Really is about creating safety, right? What I'm talking about is creating repair in relationship when there's something that's not right, and having the bigness of character to try to send safety signals to those around you. Because here's the thing: we're in a world, right? We're in a culture, we're in a time in the world where everyone wants to be right, where everyone wants to be the person in power, where everyone wants to be, perfect. And no one wants to be like, hey, my bad, my goof, let's work it out. And so you have all these people who are too proud to say these things to repair their relationships. And then we wonder why the overall tone of our relationships is more drifting towards alienation and disconnect and disharmony. We wonder why it is that people don't like us when we have maybe weird little quirks about our own behavior from our own trauma. We wonder, why, something happened and that person drifted away in our life. The thing we can do for all of this is to just come back around and repair and rebuild connection and create a bigger, permission inside the relationship for little mistakes to happen, so long as there's, trust, connection, and repair. Again, this will heal you. This will heal your trauma. This will make your life easier for letting go of your trauma, because more people will feel safe around you. This will build trust. This will heal others and their trauma, because you'll be that one person out of all the people in their life who's open-hearted, who's relaxed about these things, who's cool about these things, who's generous and patient, who's willing to try again, who's communicative, who's honest and authentic. And that goes a long fucking way. So I hope I'm making my point here. Okay, and lastly, I wanted to discuss, and this is really, I'm just kind of touching upon what, again, could be a whole other video, and maybe should be, but I realize this is getting long. I don't want to kind of yammer on too hard here, probably being a little preachy already, but I want to kind of talk about other types of safety communications in your relationships that don't have to do with verbal communication. So in other words, these are demonstrated communications, things you want to be showing people that creates that space of trust and connection and authenticity and safety and bigness and comfort between you and the people you're relating with. That really goes a long way. So these are demonstrated communications. The first one is going to be the hardest for most of us. And I'm just going to list them off. I'm not going to do a separate one for each one. But the first one is I need you. Showing people that you need them in little ways, right? Being willing to reach out to others, being willing to recruit others' help when you need them, being demonstrative that they have value in your life, just as an energetic, that they add to you in some way. And that, that invites them to show you the same. That invites them to show you that you are part of each other's team. See, here's the thing. If you really think about it, even the most self-sufficient, most badass, most highly, proficient, capable person who can do it all, and make everything happen, there's a limit to how much you can do on your own. Like point blank, period. Even if you're an avoidant person who doesn't like relationships, doesn't like being dependent on people, doesn't like being needy or seeming needy, is totally like that kind of totally aloof person, right? The bottom line is, if you want to do anything big in life, even if you're the most macho dude ever, if you want to do something big in life, you need a team, right? And so at some point, if you're going to have a team, it means that you need other people. There's a limit to what you can achieve without other people. Period. End of story. I don't care who you are. And so if you're going to have a team, you need them. And if you need them, you need to let them know you need them somehow in a way that works inside the tone of your relationship that maintains that sense of team, right? Super important. Another one is I trust you. This is nice to say, but this is more important to show. You want to show people, I trust you. I'm open to you. You know, like it's like I'm here with you. I allow your input and I'm listening. I value you. I value your thoughts. I value, your perspective. I trust you. So important to show people this. If people don't feel like you trust them, then there's going to be space in the relationship. There's going to be tension. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be, they're going to feel devalued. They're going to feel like there's a major cap or a major limitation on what's possible, what you two can do together, even as team members, right? I trust you. So important to show people this. Another one, I appreciate you, right? It's important to say, like I was saying earlier, it's also important to show. Demonstrate that you appreciate people. Enjoy their presence. Laugh when they say something that's funny. Reflect back to them something that's witty or brilliant that they've said. Show different ways that you appreciate who they are and what they do. When I was younger and I was in that scene in Northern California that I was talking about, and I was struggling as a music producer, it was let's say, a very socially competitive space. It was also very welcoming, very loving, but there was also an aspect of it that was very socially competitive at the same time. And I think that's normal, especially when you're in your 20s and you're kind of coming up to whatever kind of community you get involved in, whatever kind of cluster of people you find yourself in. There can be a socially competitive thing that starts to emerge. Obviously, it emerges kind of in high school, and it's kind of there the rest of our lives. But especially it's prevalent in our 20s as we're kind of wanting to make our mark in life, right? And so what I've found as I've moved into my 40s, still having relationships with a lot of these people, is that the tone has totally changed. And now, because, we're kind of at this age where some people have made it, some people haven't, people we know have passed away, life goes on, shit happens, right? And we've gotten to this place where now, instead of competitiveness and competition, there's an energy of, I appreciate you. Even if you're saying something I don't agree with, your vibe isn't quite my vibe, you've got your own thing going on, I don't necessarily admire it or like it, I appreciate you because you're in the game. You're here. You're in the conversation. You're doing the thing. You're a part of the movement, the culture, the community, the group of people, the friend circle, whatever it is, right? And so I think that's really important, just to show people that appreciation, that they exist, and that whatever they're bringing to the table, their unique personality, vibe, flavor, energy, however you want to think about it, is relevant and valuable and cool, even if it's not your thing. I think that that's a really, really classy thing to do. Another one is you have value to me. Again, show people that they have value to you. This kind of goes in with, I need you. This goes in with, I trust you. Obviously, you can say you have value to me, which I was saying to do earlier, but it's also something you want to do just energetically. You have value to me. Like, you're important to me. Little ways. There's always ways to kind of open up and communicate to people that they have value to you, right? And it's another one, and this is kind of, I guess, a good place to kind of wrap up all these suggestions. So a lot of this is all based on me reflecting not only on, the way that traumatized people end up having kind of behavioral quirks that kind of work against us, and not only reflecting on the ways that people drop the ball socially that I see all the time. This also is coming a lot, if I'm being honest, by my reflecting and kind of going back over attachment theory, learning more about kind of the psychology and the science of connection and how we relate. And one of the principles in attachment theory that's really important to understand as we're developing as little babies, this is true. And this is, I think, relationally true our entire life, is that there's this ebb and flow where we go kind of into connection and it gets stimulating and kind of intense, a little overwhelming, and then we want to kind of de-escalate from it, right? And there's different flavors and varieties of this, and different attachment styles that are not secure have kind of different kind of distortions of this, where they maybe go into connection too much and they want super intensity, or for others it might be about always avoiding connection and really like taking the pressure off almost too much. I want to encourage you to, for yourself and for others, make a safe space for them to come and go, to connect and disconnect, to escalate, to de-escalate, and make that okay. And the bigger communication here, if you can do this for people, is that over time they feel safe to be themselves and be authentic if you're giving them room to both connect and get close and have space. And again, this frees you up to connect with more people socially and have a better, just overall a better social life and healthier relationships with people when you give them permission. When someone wants to kind of lean into you and get a little close, and maybe that means more words, maybe that means, more time spent, and you lean into it and you work with it. It tells them it's healing for their trauma, and it tells them that they're safe and that it's okay. And if you do the opposite and you give people permission to have space, to kind of go away from you and take their time apart and de-escalate their own nervous system if they're feeling overstimulated, again, that also communicates safety. So the whole theme here is these are things you can do that are healing for everyone across the board. So I hope this makes sense. I wasn't sure that this was going to be a long video when I started, but I had a hunch it might be, and here we are. So thanks for watching if you're still watching. Anyways, I want to leave you with a suggestion. Something that you can do that is very healing, that is very regulating for your emotions, that will release trauma, that is a transformative practice in your life that you can do, that is in this vein of relational repair, right? I think when we repair relationships, I do think it reaches deeper into our psyche than we realize and heals us and our body and our long history of relational imperfections, let's say. That's profound and transformative. And so in the spirit of that, if you want something you can do that's profoundly healing, that's great for trauma release, that's great for working on your own, your own psychology here, there's a practice called Ho'oponopono. This is a Huna, that is Polynesian spirituality practice of relational repair. So it's a practice of 4 phrases, and I'll say it as best as I remember it here, but I encourage you to look up videos or articles on Ho'oponopono. It's easy to do. Set a timer, do 5 or 10 minutes of it every night. Try it for a week, 5 days or something, 4 days, and see how you feel at the end of it. See what happens even at the end of doing 5 or 10 minutes of Ho'oponopono. But the statements, basically you're going to think about a person or an issue or a relationship or a thing, and you're going to say 4 statements over and over. And I don't think it matters what order they go in. I think you can kind of mix it up. But it's, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, and thank you, which are all more or less things that I've mentioned here in this video. So if you want a healing practice to do that's kind of along the lines of relational repair, and again, this is something you don't have to do verbally with another person present. This is something you just do by yourself to kind of like set a timer or, go inside, do some prayer, and just kind of say this, focusing on that person or that situation, or maybe all the, strife in the world, if you want to do like a healing for the world kind of thing. Ho'oponopono has a very healing, profoundly transformative effect every time I've done it, and I know a lot of other people have gotten benefit out of it. So I think that's a great place to wrap, and I hope this video, really kind of touches you, inspires you. Hopefully, maybe it's going to challenge you a bit here, but I want to really encourage you to, again, lighten up about all these things, say these things more freely, and start to be a source of healing for your relationships. Turn the tables from requiring other people to be the healing source for you first, right? Because if both people are kind of in a standoff of, oh, you've got to be the bigger person, oh, you've got to be the bigger person, this is how we go years and decades without real emotional connection, without relational healing, carrying our issues further, and often, again, if you're coming from trauma and you have these personality quirks that are kind of off-putting, this is part of how they stay in place, is you making excuses for them and not, changing the pattern. So one thing you can do here, along with the Ho'oponopono, is just try all of these out. Try making them easier to say. Try saying them more often. See what happens in your life. You might be really surprised. So again, this is all coming from just huge love and care and wanting to empower you with real deal, transformative resources to improve your life. So with all that being said, I've kind of said my piece here. I've yammered on. Thank you for watching if you made it all the way through the video. And of course, do the usual, like, subscribe, all that if you haven't yet. And wherever you are, whoever you are, I hope that you're having a beautiful moment. And I truly appreciate you as a viewer, as a part of my community here on the channel. And I hope that you are thriving and healthy and happy, whether it be day or night, wherever you are on the planet. And thanks for watching. And I will have new content for you on the way soon. Take care.